In this video, I'm going to show you how to replace your front brakes. Let's get started. To start, let's remove the wheel. Typically, you'll have a 21mm lug nut, but these are not factory wheels, so for me, I'm going to use a 19mm. Regardless of your size, remove all 6 of your lug nuts, and then we'll remove the wheel. To make things easier to access, I'm going to turn the wheel all the way so that the caliper faces out. Then we can have much better access to the pads, which actually come out straight this way. You don't have to remove the caliper to take the pads out. You'll notice that the pads are held on by 2 pins, one at the top, one at the bottom, and the pins themselves are held on with this little clip. So get a pair of pliers and just pop this clip out. As you can see, it comes right out. There are different ways of taking this out. You could either do it the way I did, or you can try and grab it in the middle, twist it out of its retaining hole here, and then pull it out. Whatever you want to do, as long as it comes off. And now we can push these pins out. Hopefully they're not seized for you. If they are, get a little punch and a hammer and tap them out. You can also spray some rust penetrant in the holes where they slide through. Just make sure you don't soak it too much, because you don't want to soak this whole caliper in rust penetrant, and then you'll have to clean it all off. Slide these out. Once you get to the end, push down on this clip so it doesn't go flying. Remove the pin. Remove this retaining clip. Remember which way it goes so that you can put it back the same way. Obviously you can reference this video, but straight down and swooping inwards towards the caliper. Remove the top pin. And now to take the pads out, all you have to do is slide them straight out. However, they might be a little bit stuck just because of rust buildup here at the top and at the bottom. They slide in and they slide out. Looks like this one is a little bit more free than the other side. Just work it back and forth. At this point, once you have it partially out, if you press on it, it should help retract those pistons in, and that should give you a little bit easier time removing this, because there won't be as much pressure on them. So take this one out. Take note of this inner one that has the double wear indicator on it. This outer one will only have one at the end. The inner one will have both. At this point, to retract these pistons, you either need a special ratcheting tool, which if you don't have, do it carefully, but what you can do is stick this pad, well, compress this in a little bit, and then you can put the pad in here. This will prevent the piston from sliding back out as you compress the other one, because there are multiple. So what's going to happen is you press in one side and the other side's going to pop out, which is why I didn't remove this pad yet. Stick this pad in here. That's going to prevent the top one from coming out. Take your pry bar, gently press the lower one in. Now you're going to have to use your pad on this lower one so that you can press the top one in. This should have naturally freed up your other side just because the rotor can move around now. So take this one out. And now to press these in, you can put a pad in here. I have a different pad, a used one off of a different vehicle that is thicker. Obviously, if you can't do that, then just put the original one in. And then we'll do the same on this side as we did on the other. Hold one and press in the other piston. Next, at the bottom of the caliper, you'll notice that it's pretty dirty. So take some brake parts cleaner, clean up all of the debris that's here, and then we'll take a wire brush and brush it so that it's nice and clean. That way the new pads have a nice smooth area to slide on. Make sure you go all the way towards the back, angle it a little bit so you can get all sides, and rinse it off. We'll do the same on this side, and of course we'll do the same on the top. Now to remove the caliper, we actually have to unbolt the brake line from the knuckle, because as you can see, it has a steel brake line that leads from the caliper to this, which means this can't bend, but there is a brake hose here, so we have to release this bracket. First, let's pop the ABS sensor out of it, which you can do by squeezing these little 2 tabs and pulling it out from the back side. Okay. And then there's going to be a bolt here. A lot of times these break, so I don't have the original bolt anymore. So for me, it's going to be a 1/2-inch bolt with a nut on the other side. For you, it might still be whatever size the original one was, most likely either a 10 or a 12 millimeter. Okay, remove this bracket. As you can see, it moves. It won't go too far because of the steel brake line, but now we can get our caliper off. From the back side, you'll see the two 17mm bolts that hold this caliper onto the knuckle. Let's get both of these out. Doesn't matter which one you start with. Leave this one threaded in a few threads so it can hold the caliper while you take this bottom one off. Now you want to be careful about where you put this caliper because you don't want it hanging by the brake hose or especially the brake line. So I'm going to set it up here, get a bungee cord, and tie it out of my way. There's no pressure on this, but it's secured. Now you can remove your rotor. Mine is not stuck, but if yours is stuck on the hub, just hammer on the surface and it should break free. Next, use a wire wheel or a wire brush, whatever you have to do, maybe even a sanding disc. Depends on how bad the surface is for you, but you want to get it nice and clean. I'm just going to use a wire wheel on a drill and gently remove all of this surface rust that's here. You want it nice and flat and clean so that the rotor can mount flush. Otherwise, you'll have braking issues down the road. Rinse it down with some brake parts cleaner. Doesn't have to look brand new, but it does have to be nice and clean. And then we'll apply some anti-seize as a measure of protection to prevent further rust from building up and to prevent the rotor from seizing on in the future. Don't apply too much because you don't want it to start flinging out as you drive, and try to avoid getting it on the lug studs because these threads need to be nice and clean and dry, not lubricated with anything. This is how your wheel mounts, so obviously you don't want this to come off by itself. Try to also apply some on this inner ridge here where the rotor sits, because if it does seize up, this is most likely where it will seize. So putting some anti-seize on there will help prevent that situation. Take your rotor and put it on backwards. That is because this will be the easiest way to clean up the surface here. You want to get all the Cosmoline oil coating off that they put on at the factory. Otherwise, you'll have oil on your brake pads, and obviously that is not a good thing. So get a clean rag and some brake parts cleaner. Spray this down and wipe it off. Make sure it is completely degreased. As you can see, there was quite a bit of oil on there. Now flip it around, install it the right way, and do the same to this side. Take your caliper bolts, and if they don't look in good condition, replace them. Mine were actually completely coated and packed with grease, and that is not a good thing. If you do put anything on these, just put thread locker. Don't put any grease or anti-seize. You don't want these to come off by themselves. Take your brake caliper, slide it over the knuckle, have your bolts ready, or at least one of them, so that once you position it in place, you can start it and it'll hold the caliper for you, because these are not the lightest. Let's bottom these out. The torque on these two is 90 foot-pounds. Okay, it's time to put on the pads. The one with the double indicator, the wear indicator that is, goes on the inner side. Make sure the rotor's out of your way. Now, if you're going to put anything on the top and the bottom here, I recommend a tiny, thinnest possible layer of grease. Don't go any more than that. And I wouldn't suggest putting much here. What I'm putting on now is basically what just wiped off the pad, because this all sits very close to the rotor, and you want to make sure that you don't get any on the rotor itself. As you can see, these pads have plenty of space to move here. That is important. If they don't, that means you didn't clean up the caliper enough, and you obviously want to make sure you don't grind the metal away, because then they'll move around. But you do want to give them plenty of space to move freely. And on the outer side, the one with the single wear indicator, slide that in, and now let's put the two pins through. However, as you remember, ours were somewhat rusty, so I'm going to clean them up really quick. You can just clean them with a wire wheel and then put them right in. Okay, I cleaned them up. They don't look perfect, they don't look brand new, but they don't have to. They just have to not have a lot of rust buildup on them. If you were going to put grease on them, keep it to a minimum. Just coat it enough for it to not rust, but don't pack it on here like you would a regular slider pin, because that's not what this is, and you don't want it to get onto your brakes. So make sure you line up the top hole with the pin. Pads are going to want to slide around on you, just like that. Before you put the bottom pin in, take the new spring clip and hook it over just like this. Remember, it would swoop inwards towards the caliper and towards the rotor. This should have some spring tension to it. Take your bottom pin, line up the pads, slide this through, press the clip down, and the clip should be hooking around the bottom pin as you do this. Take this new clip, which secures the pins in place, find the bottom hole, twist it and turn it to position it where you need it so that you can simply slide both of them in, one on the top, one on the bottom. And this is the other method that I was talking about at the beginning. You would unhook it from here first, and I'm going to do it this way to install it so I can show you. There we go. Put it through the hole, and that's it. Your brake pads are secured. Just double check them, make sure everything is secured. So now go ahead and pump up your brake pedal. Now we can attach the brake hose / brake line bracket back to the knuckle. So I'm going to put this bolt through. Doesn't really matter which way you put it through. Put the nut on the other side. I cleaned the threads up and I packed it with anti-seize because, like I said earlier, these break very often and very easily. All right, it's nice and tight. Put on all 6 of your lug nuts, snug them up, and then we'll torque them to 76 foot-pounds.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.